I think the word rebel and entrepreneur are also intertwined as concepts. You have to have the drive and the willingness to step out on the edge and sort of be provocative, seek change in order to actually move things forward. And that's the DNA of the company and the brand.
Welcome back to the CEO Moves with our new and improved background and branding. Today, I'm really excited to have the CEO and owner of Rebellion Group. And before I do his intro, I'm actually going to read right from his LinkedIn because I really like what he wrote about his company. Rebels are the creators of our own journey. We seek the outer limit and we summon the spirit to blow right past it. We ignite inspiration by empowering rebellion. It's the alchemy that occurs when expertise and experimentation are combined. It's audacious, and audacity is contagious. We're a full-service digital marketing agency whose entire focus is making your business succeed. How do we achieve this? By letting our creative, curious minds do their thing intelligently, strategically, rebelliously. As our client list grows, so does the Rebel family and our institutional knowledge of each category. Check out our approach to marketing for specific industries at rebelinteractivegroup.com. So with that, I'd like to introduce Bryn Tindall, CEO and owner of Rebellion Group, to the CEO Moves. And tell us a little bit about yourself, Bryn, and where you came up with this name. First of all, I want to know where you came up with the name and why. Why don't we start there with the origin?
Yeah, first of all, thank you again for having me on the show. I appreciate it, Kurt. And
Welcome.
so Rebel, I formed the business in late 2013. I saw this as a time of change and disruption, right? If you go back and try to think about the time, and it's only accelerated since then. If you think about how radically things can get upheaved, that was during the era of taxis being undone by Ubers, and Kodak completely gone, because of all the digitization of film and all that kind of stuff, right? And there's just radical shift happening in the marketplace, and it seemed like the era of non-bold moves in my mind was over, right? So as we thought about the positioning of the brand, it turns out the word rebel is an archetype of a brand, right? A brand and branding. And if you were to ask people, are you a rebel? Like if I were to ask you, Kurt, are you a rebel? And if I defined it as an independent thinker, someone who is about change and forward motion, 100 out of 100 people would say that's me, right? It turns out everybody's a rebel, right? Not everyone is a rebel, actually, right? I always use the analogy, if you ask most men, are they good car, do they drive a car well? 100 out of 100 will say, yeah, I'm amazing. And we know that's not true, right? So not everybody is a rebel, and not all men are great drivers, right? So that was the idea, is to tap into that sort of inner essence. I think the word rebel and entrepreneur are also intertwined as concepts. You have to have the drive and the willingness to step out on the edge and sort of be provocative, seek change in order to actually move things forward. And that's the DNA of the company and the brand.
You love entrepreneurs, I can tell. You love.
I am an entrepreneur.
You are one. You love one. You love
Yeah.
them, and they're your market.
Yeah. If you've met an entrepreneur, you know it when you've met one. You can just listen to the way they talk, right? I've always described it as, these are the people that if you try to say no to them, they're gonna look at you like you're crazy, right? There is no, right? And so when you've met them, I'm not talking about franchise owners. I'm talking about people who have truly built something. You can get a sense of them immediately.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I 100% agree. I want to shift gears, even though I love this topic. I want to keep going on this in a minute, but I want to shift gears to let the audience know what marketing technology is, or a MarTech exec. I like saying that because it rhymes. Does. What's your bread and butter? What is your, if Bryn Tindall could be doing this all day long, it wouldn't be work for him. Is it events? Because I know you're doing a big event in Connecticut in a couple of weeks, or about a month. Is that your wheelhouse, or is it more the online presence and branding? or all of the above?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, right? Because I see all of those things as interconnected. But to answer your question about the MarTech, marketing was done without technology for a while, right? And now they are, completely connected. And if you are not involving analysis and data and targeting and all of the sophistication that goes into marketing, you're just doing it wrong, right? And we are now in the era because of AI. We know we literally can drill down to, are you divorced or divorcing? Is your house on the market or not? What is your worth? How many kids do you have? How much money do you have? How much debt? I mean, all of this data is sitting out there, right? And so when we determine we're after a certain audience, it's very strategic and laser focused, right? And we can intercept you in any variety of places now, right? With the messaging and the creative and so forth. The idea is we sort of reverse engineered individuals and know who they are and how they're wired, think how their decision-making process is, so that by the time a piece of content gets put in front of you and you start to interact with it, the engagement level goes up, but the individual is left with the thought of this brand just gets me. And when you think about brands that you like, Kurt,
Yep.
it seems like it speaks to your soul, your inner essence, right? They've tapped that with you, right? And in most cases, I hate to say it, that's been manufactured, right? So when I talk about targeting and we talk about being able to understand an individual, we're in the era of being able to put messaging and content in front of people down to the one, right? And so that when you do receive it, it seems like this is these guys get me. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And coming from the Generation X, I'm just thinking about how each generation that's in the workforce right now views this.
Hmm.
Gen X with a little bit of skepticism, baby boom with a lot of skepticism and paranoia maybe around it.
Mhm.
Gen Z, Gen Alpha look at it and they go, "Thank God Bryn
Yeah,
knows. Thank God
yeah,
he's here and he's serving this right up on a silver platter."
yeah,
Or
yeah,
they say they're so smart because they grew up with it and they go, "That's baloney. That's he's just telling me what I want to
yeah.
hear." And so I'm trying to think what's the right mix of, you know, getting the right message in front of your audience without making them feel like you're manipulating them or taking advantage of them, or
Yeah, that's
I don't know if
such
that's
a
a good question or not. It comes
yeah.
to mind when we talk
Yeah,
about.
it's insightful, and it's what it's if it's okay, I'm just going to cut over to we recently have been working on that same point, right, Kurt? And I brought in a gentleman who had been studying neurolinguistics at Harvard and Yale over the last 15 years, right? And what I was trying to tap is, could you take the written word, think reviews, emails, voicemails, anything that an individual has generated, could you mine it in such a way that you could reverse engineer it and understand how they're wired and how they speak, right? This is the research he'd been working on, and they conducted over the last 15 years across millions of individuals. Turns out, in the written word is the secrets to how we're wired, right? The way he describes it, if you and I were to try to have a conversation in the cognitive part of our brain, it would be very jilted because we have to think through every word.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have a conversation. So the rest of the conversation is being formed in the precognitive state and it's
Yep.
filling in all the gaps. That precognitive state is exactly the decision-making part of the brain, right? So if you can understand what and how individuals are wired and how they make decisions, then when you start to put messaging in front of them, it sort of plays right to that message, right? So what I'm talking about is very nuanced. It's a marriage between humanity and its creativity and psychology, and obviously the data and the science behind all that. Does that make sense?
It does. This is something I think most companies would pay for if they could understand. And whenever I consult with executives and soon to be CEOs, they say, "Boy, I really like to understand how my team is wired."
Right, right.
It's what everybody wants, right? And
Yeah.
what everything you just said makes me think back to a book that I read when I was in college taking marketing courses, which is a book called Positioning. I don't
Mm.
remember who wrote it, um, but what you're describing is kind of how to package your wares or your product in a way that connects with the person that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you don't position it the way that they think and the way that they're wired,
Scroll
goodbye.
past it.
You're
Yeah,
gone. You're
yeah,
gone. It's
yeah,
over. Is
yeah,
you good luck getting that client back or getting that prospect back, right?
yeah.
Unless you tap into that that wiring.
Yeah, there's two pieces to this concept, if I may. One of the things we realized as we were developing this methodology is if you think about TAM, total addressable market, right? And if you think back to the the beginning of digital advertising, right? The very first ad served, and you think about ROAS, return on ad spend, which is how all of the digital campaigns have been calibrated, right? In other words, if I spent this much money, I want to make sure I get back my return, right? So let's just play this out. So very first campaign goes out, you send it to 100 people and 20 respond. The way the tools work is they exclude the 80 and park them, and now your audience is 20, right?
Mhm.
And then you start messaging to that 20 that becomes 10, and 10 becomes 5, and 5 becomes 2, and 2 becomes 1.5. And now this is your known universe, right? And this is what you keep messaging to. And when you see companies sort of tap out and unable to grow market share, it's because they've eliminated their total addressable market by way of the very nature of the way the tools work. Does this make sense?
It does, yeah.
And
Never
so
thought of it that way, but yes.
one of the things we are talking about is rolling that back, opening it back up, and looking at the audience and say, is there a reason when that first campaign went out, the 80 that first didn't respond? Well, did you just not see it? Were you just not interested at that time? But that doesn't mean you're forever and ever not a prospect, right?
Right.
And so using some of the stuff I was describing earlier, we can then roll back the marketplace, identify the audience, drop the audiences into clusters, and begin campaigns to reactivate you into their ecosystem. Make sense?
Yeah, and now what's next? Do you help with messaging? Do you help tweak wording at that point when you
Yeah.
peel
Yeah,
back down?
yes, and yes. The tool set that we've been building, and this is, I have been clamoring to reinvent what we do because of what's coming in is here with AI,
We
right?
all have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so much of that lower end messaging and lower end creative, like you're talking about, is going away or gone, right? But the nuance of the thinking and the high level creativity to spark what we're describing, I believe, is still uniquely human and will be for a bit. So we've written tools that take, if you think about creating ad campaigns and email copy and landing page stuff, we've written programs that can do that within seconds, right? But that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that that's going to get in market, right? We're going to take that now and have, this highly trained folks look at that, make sure it makes sense, compare, right? And then it goes in market. But the ability to remove a lot of those steps that went into the formation of that is, we're already doing using AI, right?
Hmm.
And so I see what I just described to you as a harbinger for what's about to be here, right?
Okay.
Makes sense?
All right. I want to shift gears now for a second and turn internally to the way that you operate as a company.
Mhm.
You have a couple of different brands here, three or four. Rebellion, it looks like, is your largest and your most established. Is that fair, or is it the largest company that you own?
Yeah, what used to be called Rebel Interactive, we rebranded a year ago to the Rebellion Group.
Okay.
Yeah, Rebellion Group is think of it as like the parent, you know,
Okay.
and under it are the individual business units. And so Virtuoso, as you see there, is the business strategy arm. Rebel is the production, high-end creative production arm. And 535 is the think R&D, AI, dev side of the business. Those are three individual units or companies that operate under the holding company. Yeah.
And who leads these teams? I wonder about the team. I'm very bullish on having the right team to build a company. It can't just be Bryn
Yeah, no, of course. No,
driving this
I
thing.
mean, so if you back up about 2 years ago, the marketplace, began to radically slow down and from all kinds of points of view, right? And so a lot of people began to, systematically start to lose their jobs here and there. It's everywhere, right? It's not just, in the greater area here. I have been over the last couple of years trying to really pay attention to really top level talent that I think, just circumstance, just things didn't go their way for a minute and start to roll them in as I built I believe, a very elite ELT, like executive leadership team, right?
Hmm.
So there is some very talented people here we've been able to assemble that are leading the individual businesses and the individual consulting practices that we have here. Yeah.
What makes a good fit for your ELT? What do you look for?
Well, we have to align on values, right? Over my right hand shoulder is, the rebel values, right? And I, just like if you were to think about a relationship, those pieces have to align, right? So first and foremost, the the ability to have real conversation, candid conversation with each other, truthful, right? So much of what happens in society today is posts and non-truth. The truth has gotten washed out. Truth matters. I believe the truth matters. Have to have that level of honesty and truth with each other. Have to be able to have meaningful, real conversation with each other, right? I
Agreed.
believe curiosity, which is another one of the things we're focused on, being curious about the world and being able to think innovatively outside of the box is just in the DNA of what it means to be a rebel, right?
Mhm.
And a series of other things, right? But so hard work has to be in there somewhere, right? Because things just don't happen, right? And then of course the discipline associated with it, right? So there's a series of these things that I look for in people that I think are important. Yeah.
I think all those four or five that you just mentioned is describes an entrepreneur as well. So I think they all have to be entrepreneurial and want to do something, build something new, or see something around the corner, which is kind of what an entrepreneur does, looks to do, right? They're curious. They want
Yeah.
this. Oh, what's next? Can we fill that gap?
Yeah.
Is there a gap? Can we fill it?
Yeah, it's funny. We were having a conversation about, this morning with my ELT about the AI based woman who took Wimbledon by storm. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, and so it was a
Yeah.
influencer that was spun up that looked perfect in her AI in her attire at Wimbledon, sitting courtside and so forth. She blew up in terms of people following her and so forth. A very pretty woman. Turns out she's not real. She is a manufactured avatar, right? That looks like a real human that's posting about her experience at Wimbledon, and hundreds of thousands of people are following her, right? And when you talk about what's next and what's around the corner, we as an organization have to have our eye on these types of things continuously. I always viewed it as cutting edge and bleeding edge. I've tried to keep the kind of stuff we're focused on building is on the cutting edge for our customers and ourselves, and try to keep them off the bleeding edge, if that makes sense.
Okay. I'm trying to think what lessons can be learned from that, and what, I've been seeing posts on LinkedIn about it and maybe X, but I don't really understand who follows a fake person at an event and why. Do you understand the age group, or is it a certain type of?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in this particular case, very beautiful woman, right?
Okay.
And wearing all kinds of really cool outfits, talking about living the high life. Sounds like any other influencer, right?
Okay.
Posting pictures about her Wimbledon experience, sitting courtside with famous people, right? And people pick that up and start to follow it, right? The question that we were talking about today, if you can truly spin these avatars up that quickly, think about that for a minute. She has 2, 3, 400, 500,000 to a million followers almost overnight.
Right.
That becomes a media, right? And if they can be manufactured that quickly, what does that do to the market of influencers? So you see what I'm saying? There's paying attention to it, but not getting over here where it doesn't make sense. There's this constant tug back and forth on that.
Yeah, I think it just makes me think about authenticity too. I think that will be in more demand and more appreciated than what you're describing here. Would you agree or disagree? Just
I think we're in an era of authenticity. I wish it would get here faster. When I was talking about the truth, I'm so sick of the non-truth. I can't tell anymore because it's done so authentically. When
Yeah.
you see post, is it real or not real? And you're forced to, do background research on, and you can't believe anything as real, unfortunately, anymore. You got to like start scouring to figure out, is it fake or real? You know what I'm talking about, right?
It's interesting you say that, and we started this off before we even aired, talking about backgrounds and like
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
the values on your wall, and to me, that's authentic, right? Like that's it. I'd rather watch a podcast or a couple of guys talk. This is essentially a Zoom call, right? It's a
Mhm.
podcast, but it's also just a couple of guys talking. I'd rather watch that with authenticity than a manufactured, supermodel at Wimbledon. However, I understand why eyes are drawn toward the
Yeah.
the supermodel at Wimbledon. But whoa, what a waste of time, right? I mean, what a waste of time and effort and money for the people that follow that.
So this conversation here, as you probably know, could be AI generated with a version of you and a version of me, and this conversation could happen without us being here right now. You know that, right? And
I do know that.
and so if you think about the ability to take fake guests and have fake conversations, and fake, it's a relative term at this point,
Right,
right?
right.
and spin up 30 shows in 5 minutes and think about what you then could do with your time, you get the sense of why you have to pay attention to this stuff, right? Now,
Mm,
yes, you're right about authentic, but if you're behind the scenes saying, yes, I approve this message, what's the difference, right?
mm,
So there's a line in there, right? And so it's becoming really blurred. And to my point about the reinvention of what I'm trying to do with the company, I am nervous about how fast this is happening,
yeah.
which is, the one of the key pieces when we talk about, you talk about events that we're producing, one of the next events we're going to have in October, we're fast forwarding 10 years from now. And what does the world look like is basically what this next event is about, right? And in certain categories. One of the topics I want to tackle, staying on this thread, is if AI takes over the lower third of all jobs almost immediately for humans, right?
Mhm.
And you fast forward 10 years and you think about yourself and the cumulative skills you've built over the last 30 or 40, 30 years in business, right? And if you didn't have all of those layers, how could you get to where you are right now, right? And
Yeah,
fast forward 10 years from now and think about the gap in the workforce that just was created from humans giving them the ability to get those necessary foundational skills in order to do the more
right.
progressive stuff, right? And you can see that we are going to build a serious problem if we don't start talking about this. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary too.
Yes, it is.
Trying to figure out if you're suggesting that this is the last podcast I do with a human being, or or
Yeah.
the next one, part two of this, we just manufacture out of thin air.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, because I do know the technology you're talking about, where we can take this, for example, we can take this exact interview, and within put it into the AI, right? And within 5 minutes, it can rewrite the whole thing with
Mhm.
maybe a little more articulation, and
Yeah, yeah,
even a
absolutely.
female could do it, have say what I said in a better way, and have a little bit more production value, some music, and
Yeah.
that's 5 minutes, whereas we spent, a few hours getting to know each other up until now. We did
Yeah.
a little bit of a
Well,
pre-conversation.
here's where so I invited you to our event coming up, and I've invited you on. So that piece there, if you go with the direction you were talking about, all the stuff that is uniquely human and the relationships that are formed and the opportunities and the connect, all that stuff goes away in the world that you were just describing. So there
Mhm.
is a line in there, right? If you go
Right.
too far that direction, all of the other things that happen with human relationships disappear too. Does that make
I
sense?
want to go there for a second because I think
Yeah.
you're driving this conversation in that direction. There was something that you had on your LinkedIn about, bear with me a second, key
Yeah.
connections, right? Is this a company you've built or a new brand you've
Yeah,
built?
yeah. So when you go to events, larger-ish events, I assume you go to networking events from time to time, right? And if you watch, almost everybody goes to those events and they stand around and looking at people as they walk by, trying to look at their name badge, trying to figure out who they are, where do they work, what's their title, and if they seem to be somebody they should know, how do you go say, hi, my name
Yeah.
is, right? And most people cannot do this, what I've just described to you, right?
They're
It,
terrified to do it.
it is terrifying. It requires, and what ends up happening at those events is there's 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 people within the group that are super connected, usually, and some of them sometimes will introduce you. So otherwise, people just go to those events, maybe meet 1 or 2 people, and then leave, right?
You
The
see,
idea
you see the
was,
super connector. Everybody's in orbit around those super
yeah,
connectors. They go,
exactly, yeah,
well, what's
but
he gonna do next? Or what's she gonna do? Let me just follow them, and maybe I'll get a
yeah.
little bit of the
So the thinking was, could I serve up to you, let's just say at the next event, take your LinkedIn profile and your company and the history of you and ingest it into some of the applications I've been describing, and then cross-reference that against the 750 to 800 people that have already registered and the same thing, right? And then cross-sort those together and say, based on who Kurt is and what he does, what would make the top 10 really good people for him to know,
sign
right?
me up. Well, how much? How
It's
much?
free. I'm giving it to you. And so when you come up, so that's part one. So in that when you come to the event in a couple weeks here, you're gonna when you come in to get your name badge, I'm gonna hand you a sheet of paper, and I'm going old school with the sheet of paper for this reason. I want you to be able to walk around the Connecticut Convention Center with a sheet of paper and walk up to me and say, they say we should know each other. See, your name is on the sheet. I don't know why, but hey, and I believe that right there will give people enough of a intersection point. And what I'm envisioning, if you brought that up to me, I'd be like, yeah, son of a gun, look at that. Well, hi, right? I feel like that icebreaker is enough for people to like reach out. Does that make sense?
So how did you do this? So would you just pull all the language from my podcast or all the language on my LinkedIn profile and say, all right, AI, tell me if Kurt is a good fit for Bryn today at this event,
Yeah,
and
so
if
it's a
not,
marriage. Yeah, so it's your LinkedIn website, anything we can get about you, right? And then we cross-reference that against everyone else. And it's a little bit of data science meets the application I was describing earlier. Merge those two things together, and then it's spitting back out the top 10 people you should meet, and then it's listing below it, here are some conversation points, thought starters with each of these people, right? So if you were to come up to me, it might be like, this is an entrepreneur, he also has this and this, and he just recently launched blah blah blah, right? That's all you need to start a conversation,
it's
right?
that's a heck of a teaser for someone like me who, I talk to my business partners all the time. I have one business partner that's super extroverted, can't sit in a room unless there's 50 other people in the room, and then another that's more like me, more introverted, that you're sitting in the car pumping yourself up to go into the building,
Right. Right. Right.
just to have one conversation with someone like you, and
Yeah.
hopefully nobody else tries to jump in and you have to start over again.
Yeah.
So for someone like me, this has a ton of value. Even with someone like my business partner Bo,
Yeah.
ton of value to him because it's a starter.
Exactly what it is. I was envisioning if you go to this event and you've met 10 people or should meet 10 people, right? And you do, and now you've walked away with meaningful conversation. I mean, that's a good time use of your time, right? And
Hmm.
then you take that afterwards and you start stuff, right? That's the whole point of all of this. And so if I can fast track that, that's a win.
I'm actually gonna let's do it to be continued on this conversation and this call. I think there should be a part two of this after I go to this event,
Okay.
and I'll report back in, and I think that will be extremely fascinating. I really appreciate your time today, Bryn. Let's do this again. The insights that I've gleaned from this interview have surpassed my expectations
Oh, thank you.
tenfold.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate your time. Thank you for having me on the show.
great to see you.